Hello everyone, I am Dr. Sonam Ramrakhiani. As promised, I am live today on Facebook talking everything about sunscreens, the newer developments in sunscreens, what has changed in our knowledge about sun damage, and correspondingly what should change in our sunscreen factors. So, yes, I'm Dr. Sonam, a dermatologist practicing in Thane for the last 10 years. And today I am here thankful to Skinnovation for allowing me to be online, to go and meet my audience and talk to them about sunscreens and share whatever knowledge I have about sun protection, sun damage, and how can we avoid it. So yes, while we go through this video and I share whatever knowledge I have about sun damage and sunscreens, I would request the viewers, if you have any questions, you all can post it in the comments below and I would love to answer them. So starting first, I would at the outset want to first talk about sunscreens. A lot has already been spoken. Every doctor, every skin specialist is talking about a sunscreen. We're bombarding social media platforms. You should be using a sunscreen. You should be using a sunscreen. But what is it really about sunscreens that is important for you as a person who has to use it every day? What are the factors? What are the points that you should be aware of? So today's video is more of a insight into what your sunscreen should contain, what benefits it would provide you if it has certain components, and what are the things that you should look for when you're purchasing a new sunscreen, or what is an updated sunscreen for that matter. To start, first of all, I would want to put you through a little bit of details about what the sun rays are. So sun radiation from ages to go has been impacting the skin in many different ways. There have been a lot of studies conducted which tell us how the sun radiations change the skin or how they affect the skin once they fall onto the skin. Although most of the information available is about UV radiations, let me first tell you that UV radiations only form a very small part of the total solar radiation spectrum. So when we divide the sun radiation, we would have something called the ultraviolet radiations, which is very small in percentage, like only about 20% of the total solar radiation. We would then have the visible light, which is the light which we normally would see and use. That forms about 40% of the total solar radiation. Moving forward, we then have the infrared radiations. These infrared radiations also form about 40% of the total solar radiation spectrum. So although UV radiations form only 20%, and that's a very small fraction, we have studied very much in detail only about them. Till now, the knowledge available, the information available says UV radiation can be divided into UVA, B, and C. I'm sure most of you are aware UVC does not reach the earth because the ozone layer blocks it and we are protected. The UVA and the UVB radiation reach the Earth's surface and also are incident on the skin. Of these, the UVB radiation can penetrate only the superficial part of the skin, but can affect your DNA or your genes directly, causing a deeper damage and thereby most commonly being responsible for skin cancers. The portion of UVB that really falls onto the skin is very small. So yes, it is important. We need to be aware, but it is a smaller fraction. UVA, on the other hand, is more present. The proportion is higher. It penetrates much deeper into the skin. Also, at the same time, it is more responsible for most of the reasons that we would be concerned for, like photoaging. Photoaging means aging because of sun exposure or aging because of light, to be put in the right sense. It is also responsible for pigmentation and a lot of other common concerns that we would be worried about. So yes, UVA penetrates much deeper into the skin, can penetrate through your glass windows, through your car windows, through most of your reflected surfaces like a cement road, and you should be more worried about the UVA. Having said that, the SPF that maximum people are concerned about has to do with only your UVB protection. It's a SPF stands for a sun protection factor. So this tells you how much is your skin going to be protected from UVB radiations. It has nothing to do with UVA. So having a SPF number as high as probably a 40 or 50 is good, but it is not going to protect you from UVA radiations or any of the other radiations for that matter. So yes, it is important your SPF should be a good number. Anything above 30 could be considered as good for Indian skins. But at the same time, we need to look at many more things in the sunscreen apart from just the SPF is what I would want to say. So UVA radiations, like I described, would go more deeper, would cause more damage. How do you assess the UVA protection in a sunscreen? UVA protection could be assessed by your star ratings, something like a PA triple plus rating that you can boot star rating or a PA triple plus star rating. These are various parameters that are used to assess the efficacy of a sunscreen when the UVA damage is concerned. So you could look up at your sunscreen bottles and check whether you have a star rating or a plus rating, and those are also desirable factors that you should consider before buying a sunscreen. Moving forward, this was already known to us. After the extensive research that has happened upon the visible spectrum of light and the various other infrared radiations that we are studying now, it has come to light that there is a portion of this spectrum also that can cause damaging effects on the skin. What is important to note here is these radiations, which I am now going to describe to you, are present in our everyday life and we are being exposed to them in much higher concentrations than the sunlight. So yes, for example, it being the lockdown stage, we are all exposed to most of our gadgets, most of our work is happening online. We are either in front of the phones or the iPads or the laptops, and you're constantly seeing one or the other device. You're constantly facing one or the other device. It is very, very crucial that we know what kind of radiations our device is emitting, whether they can be made any better, what changes can be made to the devices so we are exposed less to those radiations, or what protective measures can we use that can expose us less. To give you a simple example, in the visible light spectrum, there is a portion called blue light, which falls between the 400 to 500 nanometer range. This is very close to the UV radiation border and would behave almost similar to UVA. This visible blue light is a very common component in most of your smartphones these days. It is also a it's also a factor which can be considered when you're talking about laptops and all your other electronic gadgets. So yes, this blue light, since I told you it behaves like UVA radiation, would again penetrate much deeper into the dermis, would also cause similar kind of damage when we are talking about pigmentation, when we are talking about aging, and all of those changes. I will describe how those changes actually happen in the skin at a later point in the video. But just to give you a brief, this is how blue light, which is something that we are exposed to almost through the day, has known to be causing similar skin damage effects like the sun rays. Moving forward in the spectrum, we have something called infrared radiations. These infrared radiations could again be divided into infrareds A, B, and C. The B and C being not so important for the skin because they practically don't really affect, they don't reach the skin that much. So major worrisome factor there being the infrared A radiations. These infrared A radiations also travel deep. Instead, they travel the deepest into the skin layers and can be causing multiple layers of damages in the skin. They can affect your DNA, they can cause changes like aging, they can cause changes like pigmentation, and so many. So while we need to be concerned about the UVA radiations, we also need to remember the blue light. We also need to remember the infrared radiations. So coming to how all these radiations really cause damage in the skin. When these radiations actually fall upon the skin, they either produce free radicals or they cause photooxidation, which would then produce free radicals. These free radicals, in simple language to be explained, are more or less toxins. These toxins would then produce their respective effects either inside the skin cells or outside. These damaging effects could be in the form of excess melanin production, excess collagen breakdown by various different mechanisms. It could also lead to weakened repair system of the body so that your healthy collagen, which is supposed to be replaced, does not happen any longer or is slowed down for that matter. Anyways, with increasing age, these processes become weak. Further sun exposure or further light exposure, sun exposure or from your gadgets, I mean to say, could then weaken this repair system further. As a result of which, you could see these changes manifesting on the skin. So your pigmentations can get worse. You can start observing fine lines on the face. You may also start seeing brown spots or fine freckles on the face. These are all those changes that you could notice when you are exposed to this light very often. For that matter, I would want to mention there's a study which says even 1 hour of exposure to your phone or to any electronic gadget for that matter, which emits blue light, your chances to develop these pigmentation and other complications become higher. So it's that less. And I'm sure in these days, we are definitely exposed to these gadgets much more than 1 hour. Rather, there was another study which says average children are nowadays exposed about 4 hours to any of those electronic gadgets. So yes, we must take care, and we should be very careful about what goes on about the skin when we're exposed to these kind of radiations. Going forward, we would now like to talk about how can we make our sun protection or skin protection from the sun better. There are many things that can be done, one of them being the sunscreen. Now, talking about sunscreens, the biggest complication that we get to hear is compliance. Doctor, I don't like putting the sunscreen because it feels very oily and greasy. Doctor, I'm indoors, so do I still need a sunscreen? These are very common questions that patients would ask us. Yes, all of these need to be answered to your satisfaction so that you are convinced that you need to use one. You have to find a product that you like to apply. You have to find a product that suits your skin tone and you feel comfortable after application. You have to find a product that you can see benefits with, because these are the only 3 factors that will really convince you to use your sunscreens lifetime. And that's how long you're supposed to be using them. So what is your sunscreen supposed to have? Like we discussed, it should be an adequate SPF, something above 30 should be decent enough. You should have a star rating, which is like about 4 stars minimum. You now have to look for protection from blue light and infrared radiations also in your sunscreen. One of the very good examples that I personally like to use is the one from Skinovation. It's called, from the Heliocare range, it's called the Air Gel. The 360-degree protection from sun damage, which can be offered through their sunscreen. It comes in 2 different forms, in a cream form and in a gel form. I prefer the gel form and I feel it's very light and nice to apply. Why is this sunscreen different from any other sunscreen that we would use? The research that goes into making the Heliocare range is extensive, and they have come up with very good ingredients in their sunscreen, some of which I would like to describe to you. For protection against blue light, they have a component called fractional biomimetic melanin. What do they mean by this? It is just like your skin's melanin. So while the melanin present in your skin is actually a protective filter, something that would prevent these radiations to travel deeper in the skin, something that would prevent the damaging effects of these radiations. So they've come up with this fractional biomimetic melanin, which actually does not penetrate into your skin, but only filters away the blue light completely. So your skin stays protected and you can actually go on to use your gadgets for a longer time. Also, for the infrared radiations, they've come up with something called the super antox complex, which they have enriched with green tea, vitamin C, vitamin E, and they have something called the Fernblock RC technique, Fernblock FC technique, which is their patented product. With this, there have been studies that they have shown which can block the infrared radiations and not allow it to travel deeper into the skin. So you can stay protected from those as well. Now, having spoken so much about radiations and so much about damage, I would also want to make a mention about why, despite after using sunscreen, sometimes the patients are not happy. They say, doctor, I still get tanned when I use a sunscreen. Even if I'm so regular, I never miss my sunscreens. I still get problems like sun allergies and stuff like that, sunburns, for example. So the answer to this is the sunscreen is a medicated product and has to be used in a specified dosage. Most patients do not use the sunscreen in the specified dosage, and there are reasons to that. The recommended dose for using a sunscreen is approximately 1 fingertip unit or 2 milligrams per centimeter square of your body. What does this translate to? This translates to 1 fingertip unit. That is from the top of the finger to the first line on your finger is the quantity that you must be using for per unit area. Say, for example, the face. Another equal proportion for the neck. Another equal proportion for your ears and the back of the neck is what you're supposed to be using. So because we do not really use sunscreens in such a thick concentration, we're not able to form a good layer, a good uniform layer all over the skin. So microscopically, when seen, you would see there are areas where the sunscreen is present, and there are areas which are still bare. They do not have protection from the sunscreen. So such areas tend to get damaged, and such areas are the ones where we would normally develop those sun-related complications. When you apply a good thick coat of your sunscreen is when there is actual proper uniform protection from the sunscreen that is available to you. Also, many people complain, and many people ask, where should we put the sunscreen? It is to be put on all the sun exposed areas, not just the face. So yes, it is your face, it is the neck, it is the arms, it's the all the exposed parts of the body that you are exposing to sunlight and to normal light, right, like this. You should be putting a sunscreen on. Having said that, your sunscreens are, whatever said, sweat resistant, waterproof. They do not last you very long. So reapplications are equally important as it is to find a good sunscreen and to use one. So reapply your sunscreen, that is at least 3 to 4 hourly. And if you're involved into any kind of water sport activities or sport activities, or for that matter, if you sweat a lot, the moment you are washing your face or wiping your face, a layer of your sunscreen is going off. So ensure that you reapply timely. Reapply enough quantity, cover all the areas, and be very, very regular, even if you're indoors. This would help you protect your skin from all the kind of damage from sun damage and from the other sources of light, artificial sources of light that we're now referring to. One important thing that I forgot to mention is your selfie. Everybody's clicking a selfie, I'm sure, now these days. So with the selfie, we all get a flash lamp. We all get a small flash in the phone. This flash is actually an LED. Even this would emit radiations or blue light exactly the way I described your normal gadgets would. So each time you click a selfie with a flash, you are exposed to very high radiation for a very brief time. Though it's a very short time, but it is a cumulative damage. Cumulative damage in the sense, a little bit every day would add up to being a significant amount one fine day. To avoid this from happening, you should be very, very particular about your sunscreens. Also, just to make a small mention, the infrared radiations can also damage your retina, can also damage your vision, and so you should be all the more careful when you're dealing with such stuff. We have a question in the comments where a patient is asking, I use a foundation with SPF, do I still need a sunscreen? Yes, my dear, when you use a foundation or when you use any makeup product for that matter which has an SPF, yes, it does offer you protection. As I mentioned, SPF would only protect you from UVB radiations. It would not do anything else to the other radiations. So while you can still use your foundation, you need a separate sunblock or a separate sunscreen which is medicated and certified enough to protect you from the other damaging radiations. Any other questions? Let's just look up. Okay, Satya wants to ask a question. You may go ahead, Satya. Any comments? I would love to have them answered, please. Okay. Yeah. My eyes burn whenever I apply a sunscreen. Yes. So whenever you apply a sunscreen, there's actually a thermal reaction that happens. And this is when you're using a chemical sunscreen. Sunscreens, for that matter, can be divided into physical and chemical sunscreens. And when we're talking about chemical sunscreens, the way they work is the ingredients or the constituents inside a sunscreen would interact with the radiation that falls on the skin to convert them into less harmless or less harmful radiations. Now, this interaction, when it happens, it generates a lot of heat. And that is the reason why you feel you sweat a lot, or your eyes may burn, or you feel a little stinging sensation on the skin whenever you put a sunscreen. Try to use physical sunscreens. They will not give you any such difficulties. Can I apply a moisturizer before sunscreen? That's instead the right thing to do. Any active products that you're looking to use, which are for delivering certain kind of active ingredients to your skin, should be applied before a sunscreen is put on the skin. A sunscreen is more like a physical blocker, so would not allow things to really go deeper in the skin. You should put all your active ingredients first and your sunscreens go last. Doctor, I have seen sunscreens available with SPF 100 on the internet. Are they safe and any best than lesser SPF? As we earlier discussed, Kavita, SPF is only one of the components in a sunscreen. It is not everything about a sunscreen. So SPF of even 30 would be decently fine for an Indian skin tone, and an SPF of 30 would offer you approximately 95% to 97% of protection from the UVB radiation, whereas an SPF of 50 would offer you a protection of approximately 98%. So increasing the SPF by 20 would only give you marginally more protection from the UVB radiation. It would still not do anything to the other set of radiations which I am talking about. Ma'am, are all sunscreens safe? All sunscreens are safe in the sense they are a must, yes. As far as safety is concerned, physical and chemical sunscreens need to be understood separately. Physical sunscreens are just blockers. They would form a layer on the skin, would not allow the sun radiations or the radiations, light radiations that we just discussed, to go deeper. So yes, they are safe for all, even for children. But when we talk about chemical sunscreens, they are ultimately chemical agents, and you need to check if you are allergic or sensitive to any of those, and then decide whether it is safe for you or not. Doctor, I have dandruff and tried a lot of shampoo, but it comes again and again. Sorry, we're not talking about dandruff today, Satya. We could probably speak on this some other day. Ma'am, whenever I go to a water park, I tan immediately, even after applying sunscreen. Any waterproof sunscreens that you would recommend? Mr. Vikas, when you go to a water park, you need to understand whatever sweat resistant and water resistant sunscreens you may use, they combine with water and they are washed off the skin. So reapplication of a normal waterproof sunscreen would be just enough. You do not need anything specific for that. But reapplication probably every half an hourly or 1 hourly, if you feel you're getting so badly tanned, is something I would recommend. Okay, Pratiksha asks a question. I have a tinted sunscreen. Are they superior than regular ones? Yes, Pratiksha, tinted sunscreens tend to contain tend to contain iron oxide, sorry. That gives the tint in the sunscreen. So it looks like a foundation. Also, if your iron oxide is present in a desirable concentration, that is 3% and plus, it offers you a better protection. So a tinted sunscreen goes higher than a normal sunscreen. Good evening, doctor. If I apply 90 SPF sunscreen, then I have to apply every 4 hours. No, Jaykanan, you have to understand your SPF being 90 or 100 doesn't differ the times that you have to reapply, or doesn't differ the duration of protection that you would get from a sunscreen. So you still have to apply every 3 hourly, which is ideal. Okay, do we have any more questions on the sunscreens? While we get some more questions, I would also want to share with you, most females often complain, doctor, I tend to sweat after a sunscreen. Also, my face looks darker. How can we address that issue? The way I normally tell my patients is either you prefer using a tinted sunscreen, that's one of the options. Second, even if you're using a standard white sunscreen, doesn't matter. You apply a good thick coat, wait for a few seconds. You are bound to sweat because it creates that kind of a change in the skin. You could then dab up a little bit of your compact powder or your normal talcum powder on the skin. This would help you in two ways. One, it will absorb the sweat, so it will keep the skin from looking greasy and grimy. Second, it would, if you were using a compact which has an additional SPF like we earlier discussed, it would be a better protection on top of your sunscreen and would not do any harm. That way you keep looking fresh, you keep looking your normal skin, you don't look darker, and that motivates you enough to reapply your sunscreen timely and for longer times. Please suggest a tinted physical sunscreen for acne prone skin and sensitive skin and non-pore clogging. Harsha, these days we have many sunscreens which are non-comedogenic and tinted, and we have a lot of brands available. To it will be wrong to mention a few names here, but then maybe we could connect on our personal chat or on the direct messenger, and I could recommend you some brands there. Nonetheless, you can look for non-comedogenic sunscreens. They would be from reputed companies. Many of them are available. Any product to protect my hair from sun damage? Pratiksha, hair from sun damage is another big topic in its own self. Yes, even hair needs protection from sun. Your leave-on serums that you generally tend to use post-shampoo, post-conditioners are nowadays enriched with SPF and can protect the hair from sunlight or from sun damage. But having said that, let me tell you, physical protection is the best. So if you are a person who travels very often on a two-wheeler or where your hair is exposed to all of these kind of damage, it is wiser to cover your hair. That gives it the best kind of protection. I hope I have answered that. Anybody else for a question? Okay, I do not see any more comments. I Okay, we have one more question. Shailendra wants to ask, I have a beard, how do I apply a sunscreen? Okay, Shailendra, if you have a very dense beard, your hair is a natural sun protection to your skin. But if you have a very thin beard or a very scanty beard growth, then you still should put a sunscreen. You have to ensure that you apply the product and then massage it into the skin. That's how it's supposed to be applied. If you have a very dense beard, you may choose to avoid the area. Doesn't make a difference. So while we get some more comments, I would like to stress a little more upon sun protection for the eyes and for your lips. We all tend to be so conscious of our sunscreens. We really look into what it contains, how much is to be applied, and all of that. But so trivial, we tend to forget that we're supposed to cover your eyes as well as your lips as well as your ears when you're applying a sunscreen. Why? Because even these are areas which are exposed to sunlight. One. Two, they are instead the thinner and the more delicate areas of the face where sun exposure can cause much more damage and can show you damage which shows and can create damage which shows up much faster. For example, we get fine lines as we age. Eyes is the area where you see your fine lines first. So lip pigmentation is again another very common problem that we face. Why? Because maximum people tend to forget or ignore their areas like the lips and the eyes when they apply a sunscreen. So be very, very particular when you're using your sunscreen. For people who have allergies, sensitivities, or reactions to certain products, may choose to use physical sunscreens. These would be better for people with sensitive skins. We have a question which says, ma'am, can my child use my sunscreen? No, Mr. Vikas, sunscreens for children are different. They are purely physical. They cannot have chemical filters. That's not safe for them, or rather not studied and researched enough for them to be using it. You can choose a physical sunscreen for your child, and you may choose to use the combination ones. All right, I think we are done with all the questions that we have today. Anyways, the video will be available on both the Skinnovation page and will be available on the Srishti Skin Clinic page. If you have any more doubts related to sunscreens and related to what kind of products you should be using, you can get in touch with us and I would be glad to answer them for you. Hope you guys found it useful and it'll make a difference in the way you look at sunscreens and sun damage. Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.